What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Ryan D. Lee Show, hashtag RDL Show. We got a big show for everybody today. It's the end of our first week. Kicking out all the bugs. Had a little delay start to the show today, but it's been a fun week. It's been great experience. I'm calling it the little engine that could show out there. We started with 2 subscribers. We're up around near 150 now. So, I don't know what the percentage in math is, but that's a pretty good response rate. Let's see if we can keep it going by doing good work, by having good content. Today's show is awesome. We're going to talk a lot about the NFL, in particular the quarterback position, and just all the uncertainty this year. There's some desperation around the position and where we go from here. Now, the Denver Broncos are one of those spots, and we're going to bring on as our special guest today Benjamin Allbright. He is the go-to guy, all things Broncos, as well as draft, off-season. He works for the flagship station there, KOA Colorado, as their analyst. Excited to hear his thoughts on that. I'm a Drew Luck fan, and we do not know if or not that's going to play out. They've been a big pusher in the Matthew Stafford scenario, the Deshaun Watson drama, all that. Russell Wilson's name has popped up in the mix. So big show wrapped around quarterback play in the NFL. For whatever reason, it feels like this is one of the more monumental offseason where the quarterback mobility from team to team, or there's just a ton of teams we do not know what they're going to do at the quarterback position. So those that do have theirs in place have to feel pretty good heading to another uncertain offseason when it comes to virtual meetings, no lack of combine. We're going to get into breaking down quarterbacks in the draft as well. I'm going to take some time each show over the next couple of weeks and break down one quarterback out of the probably 5 or 6 or so that are thought to be in the first or second round area. And today we're going to break down Trevor Lawrence. I've got a chance to spend quality time with him when I've spoken to Clemson, Dabo Sweeney, and that team in fall camp before. Spent a few days there watching him practice, conversing with him and just kind of getting to know the young man. And I think that Jacksonville is in for a real treat with this guy. And we'll break him down a little bit later. So on Wednesday, I opened the show with a thought about gratitude and the opportunity to do something like this, especially in a time where there's a lot of control that feels like it's been taken away from us, not only with COVID, but the government and everything like that, the uncertainty is based in fear. So we've taken control back a little bit. We've decided we're just going to do our own show. And what has given us that opportunity really is with COVID and the stay-at-home orders, we're all doing this show from the comfort of our own homes and the technology that exists. Jonathan's down in San Diego. Sky, you're in LA here, aren't you?
Where are you at? Eugene, Oregon.
Dirty huge.
You're up in Eugene, Oregon, and of course Charlie Moss from the Charlie Moss Show is in Indiana, and I'm in Beverly Hills. And I don't know if a lot of you saw yesterday, but there was this breaking news about a broad day robbery. Some guy was wearing a $500 million. No, it couldn't be $500 million. $500,000 watch, and he was attempted to be robbed. And this restaurant is right around the corner. I got home last night, and the helicopter is just spinning around my neighborhood. And I don't know what that goes to show you, but I think what it probably tells me is that don't spend $500,000 on a watch, and don't let anybody know that you're wearing a $500,000 watch. Is probably the opinion of what I have on that. There was gunfire and someone was shot. I don't know if they have the suspects in custody, but yeah, this happened just down the street here, So it's good to stay in the house and do the RDL show, Our buddy Jake believes that the Charlie Moss Show is elite. Is elite a word that it was coined by PJ Fleck and millennials? I think is that what it is? That's what I think that's about. Back to what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to have some fun. We're trying to give you guys some content where you can come and listen for an hour a day, learn a lot about what's going on in the world of sports, but kind of not take things so seriously, and have almost open and honest conversations. So I've really enjoyed this week. Next week we'll dive right back into it. It's going to get free agency kicks off on Monday, and we'll take a real deep dive into that, as well as start to talk about the NBA as that starts to heat up, getting into the All-Star break in Major League Baseball. In spring training, everything is coming back to normal. What is it really going to look like? Are there going to be fans in the stands? Is it going to look somewhat normal when fall football comes to fruition in August and September? So our first topic of conversation really, as I talked about, revolves around the quarterback situation. And that's the best way to put it. Quarterback confusion. Where are we with the quarterbacks? I thought about a couple of weeks ago doing some NFL radio, I thought there were 16 teams that had some sort of quarterback question marks. And now that's been dwindled down a little bit, fellas. The Colts fixed their problem. They went and got Carson Wentz from the Eagles. The LA Rams made the trade for Jared Goff to Detroit for Matthew Stafford. So those two seem to be in line, though I do think that the Detroit Lions and that big contract that they took on of Jared Goff's, if they could find another bidder with some draft capital somewhere, I'm not for sure that Jared Goff is set in stone in Detroit for this year. Watch for that movement to play out. So I still keep Detroit kind of in that conversation. But as you can see at the scroll at the bottom here, we got a ton of teams, right? A ton of teams. The Bears and the Washington football team are the two things that I think are the most desperate, okay? Mitchell Trubisky's fifth-year option wasn't picked up. He is a free agent as of right now. The only quarterback under contract for them, and Matt Nagy in his probably final year, what I think is a lame duck year for him, is Nick Foles. So they are in the running, and every single day we hear more and more rumblings out of Seattle now, out of Houston. What's going on? Things of that nature, and the only ones that have been rectified are in Pittsburgh, where yesterday Big Ben Roethlisberger reworked his contract a significant amount to allow for more cap space and his cap number not to be so high. It was initially going to be about $41 million of a $180 million salary cap, which is crazy. And he's going to be their quarterback for one more year. And there's been a lot of discussion around whether or not that was the best idea, or just to get rid of all that money and go searching for the new quarterback of the future. What's your guys' thoughts on the Ben Roethlisberger news, and whether or not this is a good thing, and should fans of the Steelers be optimistic for this next year?
I mean, does Big Ben make them a contender? Are they? Because odds are, I mean, like, we obviously know about the turnover on the offensive line. The backfield's been interesting with Benny Snell and James Conner. It's been somewhat inconsistent. Conner hasn't been what we saw him when he replaced Lev Bell back a couple years ago. Does re-signing Big Ben in the present state that he is in? Yeah, they went 8-0 last year or whatever.
11
on the
11-0
in the back half of the season, they faltered.
They won the division.
But does Big Ben, like, does it make sense to re-sign somebody who's going to get you a wild card spot or maybe a first round bye, but not going to win you a Super Bowl, versus investing in a quarterback that will prepare you to be a contender in the near future?
I think that's the broader question here. And I think they addressed that by picking up Dwayne Haskins as a free agent after he was waived by the Washington football team. I think that was a step in the right direction. And I've told a lot of people, if anything, at the end of this year, if anything the Steelers need in terms of goals, they need to find out who their quarterback of the future is going to be, whether it's going to be Dwayne Haskins or it's going to be somebody else that they have to go find in the draft or make a trade for. Simple. That's what this year allows them to do. This allows them to be competitive, because Ben Roethlisberger can be competitive. He's a guy that can take a team and go 11-0, win a division. They have a new offensive coordinator. They're going to have to get some new weapons offensively because they're going to lose some in free agency. Juju Smith-Schuster is one that's out there on the brink, and I suspect he won't come back. I think that's going to be okay. They can elevate James Washington, but they got to catch the ball better. The offensive line is something else, right? Marquise Pouncey retiring. Villanueva going to be a free agent. His left tackle, I hear the Chargers are in play for that guy to protect Justin Herbert's backside. So it's going to be interesting with what they do, but I think it was the right move. It opened cap space. It allows them to bolster their defense. It gives them a year to still vie for a division championship, maybe get lucky here or there, because they're going to have to battle Cleveland and Baltimore now for the foreseeable future. And if Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals keep improving, this division is going to be ripe with competition. But I don't know what you do if you go and play Mason Rudolph, or if you thrust Dwayne Haskins in there to see if he's the guy in year one and go 6-10 or something like that. I don't know how much that benefits you, except it puts you maybe in a better position to draft a quarterback a year from now. The draft class at quarterback seems to be a little interesting. I don't know if any particular name sticks out. Spencer Rattler's a name that's going to be there. Keaton Slovis, which I can't believe I just said that out loud, but I did, is going to be in that situation. But overall, I think they did the right thing on both sides. They give Ben. I also have this question too. Do you want to, Phillip Rivers leaving, he was so competitive and loved the sport and being around fans. There's got to be a lot of players that are like, I don't want to go out this year where it was a season where we we played in the forest and we were the tree that got chopped down and no one heard it. I want to play my final year in the league with, an audience, with people there to watch it play out in real time. I really would. So I was surprised a little bit when Phillip Rivers' decision, but moving on to the Jets, the step and all yesterday in terms of the quarterback play, right? The Jets, Joe Douglas, general manager, spoke up at his Wednesday press conference and talked about where they were with Sam Darnold. Now, he had some glowing remarks about him, what a unbelievable talent and hard worker and leader and all these things, all these his attributes to him. And then ultimately, the only thing that matters in what he said, but if people call, we're going to answer the phone. That for me ultimately was the answer. Ultimately the answer about what's going to happen in New York, and they are going to be moving on from Sam Darnold. I think it's a mistake. I really do. I think they just put themselves right back in a situation. You bring in a guy like Zach Wilson, which is the name that's being floated around. We don't have a lot of information on him. We have two USC quarterbacks, the last two guys drafted highly, that have, I thought, done pretty darn well, but still flamed out there. And now you got a young man from the Mormon school of BYU in Utah, and how he's going to deal with the Big Apple and everything like that should be rather interesting. But it looks like that's where they're going that way. As for the Washington football team, yesterday or just this morning, Alex Smith was officially released, freeing up about $14.5 million in the salary cap. Allows them to kind of go after the quarterback situation. And those are the things that we talked about. We have a Bears fan here, of course, a diehard Bears fan, and he's in the mix right now. He's hearing rumors. He's seeing ghosts. He thinks Russell Wilson's showing up in Chicago. But our boy Charlie, what do you think about the Bears situation? I mean, they may be the most desperate team out there because they said no to the number 2 overall pick. They have Nick Foles on retainer essentially, but they don't have anything moving forward. And Matt Nagy was given another season for a team that snuck into the playoffs. They seem as lost at sea as anybody right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you were right on it. We didn't pick up Trubisky's 5th-year option, which I think was a good move, but we don't want to just be stuck with Foles. So I think Pace and Nagy need to make a big move, make that push for Russell Wilson. I know there's a lot of news and articles regarding that, but something needs to happen, or else those guys are going to lose their jobs and Bears fans are going to stay unhappy.
Are they going to re-sign Allen Robinson anytime soon?
Allen Robinson said after the season that he believed there was a lot of time during the season to negotiate a deal. So I'm going to say it's not looking too likely.
Yeah, we had Cynthia Freeland on Wednesday, and she talked about this too. She believes Allen Robinson's the most valuable wide receiver free agent out there. and that includes Chris Godwin, because they think they can get Allen Robinson probably for a better price than Chris Godwin if you're going to pull him out of Tampa Bay after a Super Bowl winning season. So yeah, they could be down absolutely no weapons offensively. It's going to be a heck of a journey ahead of Pace and Nagy, and I keep continuing to say I think it's a lame duck year for them in terms of like backing into the playoffs with that extra wild card team this year. Mm-hmm. Only kind of allowed ownership to say we really can't fire a guy that got us to the playoffs twice in the last 3 years, you know. And defensively, they're always good. Khalil Mack leading those guys, so they're a team that's desperate for quarterback in that quarterback situation. We go a little southeast to Washington D.C. and the Washington football team. Alex Smith, we just talked about being released. They have Taylor Heineke on contract for 2 years. They have Steven Montez out of Colorado, who was on the practice squad a year ago. And then they have a tendered offer to Kyle Allen, who most likely is going to be there as well. So those are the 3 guys that will be on the roster. They have been in play for Matthew Stafford. They are in play in terms of, I'm sure they're one of those teams that are calling the Seattle Seahawks about Russell Wilson. I'm sure they're one of the teams that are calling the Houston Texans about Deshaun Watson. The difference between those 2 scenarios, the Texans right now aren't picking up the phone. They're not listening to the messages. They're not doing any of that. In Seattle, otherwise, they're actually listening. If you have a Super Bowl winning quarterback who's playing pretty much in the prime of his career, where are you as a franchise if you're willing to take those calls? I get it if it's Sam Darnold, because there's some unknowns and it's New York and you're always thinking that a new quarterback's going to change the world for you, and it just never has before. So, but if you're Seattle, what are you doing? And, you know, unless it's a place where you want to go, where Russell Wilson wants to go with his no trade clause, it really doesn't matter. So this offseason, a season of incredible ups and downs in the quarterback situation, you know, we're in flux and we just got started. Those are just really the main headlines. But one of those teams is the Broncos. And we're going to talk to Benjamin Allbright here in just a moment about the situation in Denver, where they go. Do they stick with Drew Lock? Do they find their way to make a blockbuster deal for one of these quarterbacks? Where does that leave them? What does that look like? You know, what do the Patriots do? That's another thing. We have a bunch of teams to look at after our conversation with Benjamin. But first, we're going to talk to you a little bit about Sunfair. You're going to hear about Sunfair a lot, right? It's been a huge part of my recovery. I started working with Sunfair back in July with food delivery every single morning, and it's transformed my body. It's transformed my mind. What I put in my body fuels the way I think, the way I go about stuff. Their ability to work with you in any particular signature diet. This is what you need to do to get 10% off your first order. Is go to the website, sunfair.com, of course. Go through the sign-up process. Once you enter your information, you need to select Carl Ferro, Ferro, as a sales representative. And then, of course, select the Ryan D. Leaf Show. And that's how you heard about us. Complete your sign-up, and you will get 10% off your first order of Sunfair. And it's a commitment. Don't get me wrong. It's a commitment. As a former athlete, it's been pretty helpful to be able to have some kind of focus, some kind of stringent pattern of doing things. Sunfair does that. They deliver your food to your doorstep every morning. You put the green bag back out every night, and the delivery man or woman drops it off a new bag in the morning, and away you go. Tonight we got. I'm gonna tell you what we got. This is what I'm gonna tell you what we got tonight.
Ryan, do you get that before and after photo? You not only do you have abs, but you're also tanner. Is that the LA sun, or does Sunfair also just change the pigment of your skin? Because I would love to be able to get that tan without actually going outside.
It's sitting in front of these bright lights when I do the RDL show is what it does. No, it's well, that's also a doctor's picture. So it's in a doctor's office, the before, right? The after is it more looks like I have a golf tan. Looks where my neck is more red than my body. What I will say is that the picture. I don't know. I'm off the crowd. All right. So today's lunch is awesome, guys. Greek chicken salad. All right. It's just chopped up Greek chicken. It's got feta cheese. It's got cucumbers. It's got olives. I love this salad for lunch, but it's great. And then dinner tonight is just a bomb ass turkey bacon burger. So it's got turkey burger. It's got some bacon. It's got a pickle, lettuce, tomato. Got some onions if you're into that stuff. I'm not. I don't like onions. I think it's the worst food you could imagine. So that gets discarded. But that's my day. Has a little snack in the afternoon, which is today it's some almond butter and some walnuts, and away you go. It's about 2,100 calories, probably around 60% fat, 30% protein, and about 10% carbs. And I move a little bit more, right? I play some golf, and I do some hiking, and that's what gets me through it. And so if you're anybody in the LA or Scottsdale, Phoenix area, go to sunfair.com. I guarantee it will change your life. It will. It's all about the food, and I truly believe that. So again, go to sunfair.com, pick your sales representative and Carl Farrow, and then of course tell them that the Ryan D. Lee Show sent you, and you'll get 10% off your first order. Next up, we are going to bring in Benjamin Allbright from the Denver Broncos. He works for KOA Colorado, their flagship station that covers the Denver Broncos. Drew Lock for me is an interesting conversation. I think this team, and it'll be interesting to talk to him. Of course, Jonathan, let me know when we have him.
Sure.
What they're going to do, where they're going to go. This team for me feels like it hasn't necessarily gotten better, but I wouldn't say I feel like it's gotten worse either, right? It's just kind of maintained. And when you're in a conference, more specifically in a division where you have the Kansas City Chiefs twice a year and who have played in the last 2 Super Bowls and the last 3 AFC championships, the expectations differ. The expectations change. What does that ultimately look like? And where do we go from there? So are they ready to move on from Drew Lock? I think he's an injection of excitement and fun. He is a little careless with the football, which is a problem. Don't get me wrong, but I think I think I look at it in the same kind of terms as the Jets. I think Sam Darnold's still a fit there in New York and can get it done. I think Drew Lock's still a fit in Denver and can get it done. But what do we do? What do we do with that? When your fan base and the media and other people start clamoring for a new quarterback, it's almost viewed through the optics, even in the organization, that it's not working and you have to move on. And I think that's what's happened in New York. And I'm really interested to see what Benjamin has to say about what it's like in Denver. And here we go. Benjamin Allbright from the Denver Broncos, KOA Colorado flagship station, just all things Colorado. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Yeah, sorry I was late. The Justin Simmons news, I was just chatting with him. He got a text from his agent. He is getting franchise tagged, so I had to go through the break process of that. I apologize for being late.
What is the when is the deadline for that? Like March 9th? Is that the deadline to get the franchise tags in?
Yeah, March 9th is the deadline to get it in. This is a negotiating ploy for Justin Simmons. They do want to get him done long term. They're working on a 4-year deal, so they're just it's a negotiating ploy. It keeps everybody else from being able to negotiate with him and all that. But yeah, March 9th would be the day. They're just getting it done early here.
Is this something that is official now? Like we talked about, it's officially talking. So he's going to play under the franchise tag this year, and hopefully during the season, they're gonna figure out a way to get an extension next season during the year.
They're going to get an extension done. I think he won't play on the tag this year. I think they'll get it done.
That's what I thought.
He would be very upset having to play on the tag this year. He would be highly upset. He was willing to do it for 1 year, doesn't want to do it for 2. And like I said, they're working on a 4-year deal. He wants to be he wants to be shown the respect. Like, he wants to be a guy that's paid in the top 5 safeties. Doesn't have to be the highest paid, just wants to be respected by his club and get that top 5 safety money. They didn't get that last year. They were about a little over $500,000 to $1 million APY apart. And so this year, he's pretty firm on that. This is where we want to be. I want to be respected. I've been great on and off the field. I've been a banner member. I'm the future face of this. Now, he wouldn't put it that way because he's not that that arrogant. But reading between the lines, that's kind of where he wants to do that. So.
And in this defense with Vic Fangio, that he's fit in pretty darn well with what the Broncos expect from him, and it's going to be a big piece of them if they expect to get better next year.
Yeah, they had 8 starters out for most of the season last year. You look at that, Von Miller was out. By the last quarter of the season, the entire defensive line was out, and they were down to cornerbacks 6, 7, and 9 on the season. They really do feel like this defense can be a lot better if it can just stay healthy. And that's the thing. Last year you had Von Miller out. Bradley Chubb was coming back off an injury. Mark Barron was the guy to be the other inside linebacker, and he couldn't get healthy, so it ended up being Josie Jewell, who they were trying to replace. And then, like I said, on the defensive line, Jarrell Casey, they got a game and a half out of him. Shelby Harris missed 6 games due to COVID. And then, Mike Purcell got that big contract and got himself hurt half a season. So they do expect a big improvement, which is interesting because they were the number 1 red zone defense in the NFL and a top 10 defense, even with all those issues. So, for the team to be what it needs to be, they do need that defense to be healthy, but they need the offense to take the step forward.
Yeah, that's impressive. I didn't know that stat about being how stifling they were in the red zone in a division that was explosive, with some great quarterback play around them. Speaking of the quarterback play, right? This is the bigger question. That Denver's kind of been in the atmosphere in terms of conversation when they were talking about the Matthew Stafford situation. Deshaun Watson's name's been brought up a bunch. Russell Wilson's being thrown into the mix right now. I've kind of followed you in terms of how you've covered Drew Lock. I like him. I like what he's brought to the table. He's been a little careless with the football, but I feel like this Denver Broncos team, for kind of being irrelevant the last couple of years in terms of the playoffs and stuff like that, haven't gotten worse. They haven't necessarily gotten better, but it's been kind of a maintenance thing, and they just maybe a player away from popping. Is it the quarterback, or do they need to look elsewhere?
I think it is the quarterback position. I think you look at this team; it hasn't been the same since Peyton Manning was gone. And really in that final year when he struggled, Brock Osweiler actually outplayed him. Statistically speaking, so they just struggled to find and identify the quarterback since then. And whether that's Drew Lock or not, they'll kind of get a chance this season to run it back with some competition and kind of see. But that's where they're at with this. Drew, they like his talent, they like his tools. He's just a little bit slower at picking things up, if that makes sense. I don't want to call him a slow learner because that's not exactly fair, but it takes him just a beat longer to kind of conceptualize some of this stuff. And once he gets going, he gets going. You look at his numbers in the last quarter of last season, and they're light years better than the 4 games prior to it. It just takes him a minute to get going. And he's still trying to play, how young quarterbacks are. He's trying to play YOLO ball. He doesn't want to take the safe stuff. He wants to showcase that big arm. He got away with it in college. He's not going to get away with the pro game. And so that's kind of thing. This offense is loaded with young talent. I mean, you look across at the skill positions, you've got Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, even Tim Patrick came through and had a big game. Albert Okwuegbunam looked fantastic till he got hurt. And they've got the offensive line more or less shorn up. So really it's about the quarterback and finding that quarterback. I think this team has gotten better since Vance Joseph has exited and Vic Fangio's come in. They've gotten a lot more competitive. They just haven't turned that into wins.
So, having said that, we have a question here from one of our viewers, Luke. Drew Lock plus Caleb Farley, Parsons, or Trey Lance plus. What does that mean, Sky? I mean that. Is that the trade they want? Caleb
Farley or Micah Parsons or Trey Lance and sign a defensive player. Okay. I think I'm guessing here. I think which are they asking? Which I would rather do, or which was more likely?
Yeah. What do you? what would you do if you, with your draft pick right now in the quarterback situation? Where would you go if you were wearing the GM hat right now for the Denver Broncos?
Well, in a vacuum, I would go get Trey Lance. Now, given the situation of this football team, you got a GM in his first year and George Payton. I'm not going to do that. If I'm a first year GM, the clock starts the minute I hire a coach or draft a quarterback. So what I would do is probably trade back from 9 or attempt to trade back from 9 this year, build the war chest, run it back with Locke and a veteran, see if Fangio and this offense are what they need. And if not, then you're blowing it all up at the end of the year. And now you've got the draft capital to really do that next year. So for me personally, I would trade back, sign a veteran, stopgap guy, or trade for like a Nick Foles, and roll those picks into the future so that if I'm coming into this next year, we either have a winner and we know what we need, or we are so bad we're blowing it up and we're going to be in a position to draft the guy we want with these extra picks anyway.
Is there a guy next year in that next year's draft class that you're that would be something that would fit? I started thinking about it today in terms of who's out there. Spencer Rattler's a name that's been Ritter, Howell from North Carolina. Those are some names, but I don't feel like there's a name that has been trending for a few years that you're like, wait, like when Trevor Lawrence, after his freshman year and won a national championship, people are talking about he should be able to go pro right now. We can't wait for 2 more years to come. We haven't had anybody really that we've talked about like that who's going to be a draft eligible guy next year. Is there a guy that you think that Denver may have an eye on if they decide to stick with Locke and try to go through the season with that mixture of players?
I think Howell's at the top of that class, as you mentioned him out of North Carolina. I think next year's class is actually better than this year's class in terms of more viable prospects. There's just not that guy at the top like there is like the Trevor Lawrence. There's not that elite prospect. There's maybe the guy that's kind of right below that. I like Rattler a lot out of Oklahoma. I like Howell. There's a couple guys you didn't mention. The kid out of Arizona State. If he can put some weight on, I mean, he's 6'3", $175. That's dangerously thin. But if he can put some weight on, he could be something. Jaden Daniels, Carson Strong out of Nevada. Not a lot of people talking about him. I think he's pretty good. The kid out of Liberty, Malik Willis. There's a lot of, I think, guys that are very viable prospects next year that I think could be something in the league. Just not that top tier talent. You know what I mean? Not a guy that you come in saying that's a franchise guy, but there might be a dozen guys, maybe 15 guys that get drafted next year. Where you're looking at this year, you're probably looking at 8 guys that get drafted.
Do you think that this Broncos draft could do something a little different? And if in a later round, let's say the 3rd or early 4th or who knows, when Davis Mills out of Stanford comes available. Now he's a guy that a lot of people think has first round talent, but has a limited amount of games and has been pretty injured. But I think, now that John Elway is not pulling the strings necessarily, it may not be so there. But I mean, if there's a quarterback they think has first round talent and is worthy, do you think they could pull the trigger on a quarterback this year in the draft around the 3rd or 4th round to compete with Drew Lock?
Maybe, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them take like a day 3 flyer on a guy like a Jamie Newman, somebody with a bunch of upside that hasn't had the reps. I don't know that you'd be drafting somebody day 2, day 3 to compete with Locke in the sense that he'd be competing for a starting job. But if you see like a long-term developmental guy, Kellen Mond, Jamie Newman, guys like that, I wouldn't be surprised to see him take a flyer on that at all. I think this draft for the Broncos is going to be mostly defense. You may see a developmental quarterback. You probably see a running back, but I think this draft for the Broncos is going to be mostly defense.
Philip Lindsay, I covered him a ton in college. Absolutely unbelievable story, hard worker, talent when he gets on the field. It's been a matter of him keeping him on the field injury-wise. Is he going to be going into the season as the number 1 guy at running back, or are they looking to kind of do it by committee again because of that injury bug? Well,
yeah, there's a couple of things going on here. Melvin Gordon's facing a suspension for DUI. So that's going to present a problem. I don't even know if Phil he's an RFA, so I don't know if they're going to give him more than the original round tender. He really hasn't fit in with Pat Shurmur very much. Pat Shurmur likes to run inside. Phil Lindsay's more of an outside zone guy. I have a feeling they may original round tender him and kind of do look to see if they want to match the contracts that get offered to Phil Lindsay, and otherwise just let him go and then go to the draft. If they do the trade back, as I mentioned, one of the things that you could see in the first round is they might go after Najee Harris, who I know they like a lot. Not a lot of people are projecting a running back to the Broncos right now. But if that Phil Lindsay situation plays out, now you get those bigger backs that Pat Shurmur likes. Shurmur likes guys that they hold up in pass pro and can catch the ball out of the backfield. Melvin Gordon fits that. He's 220, holds up in pass pro, and catch out of the backfield. Royce Freeman kind of fits that. Phil Lindsay at 5'7" generously, and a $169, trying to pass protect against Joey Bosa is just asking the kid to get smoked. So, I don't think that's the way that they want to go. They like Phil Lindsay, like what he brings. The problem is he just doesn't fit what they do, and they have to create kind of gadget plays for him. So I would not be surprised to see him. Move on due to an original round tender.
All right, so let's get you out of here with Benjamin Allbright from the Denver Broncos flagship channel, KOA Colorado. Let's get you out of here with this one. There's the mobility in the NFL, right? I don't know. Is this a trend? Is this just a one-off year where you have some of the quarterbacks that are stepping up and saying different things? Because a lot of people are likening it to what some of the big names in the NBA are doing. And I don't think it's trending in that direction. I think this is a bit of an anomaly. But, players who are under big contracts simply saying, hey, this isn't working for me. Find me a place that it does. And our organization's going to appease or what's going to happen.
Well, I think that there is the potential for that a little bit, but really it only applies to like the top 2-3% of players. Because contracts aren't fully guaranteed in the NFL, it's not like the NBA. There's not a lot of leverage there. The guaranteed money is the only leverage that you have as a player. So like, for instance, with this Deshaun Watson thing, everybody's talking about Watson and, Watson has all the power. He's going to force his way out. Well, he may do that, but really the Texans have all the power because Watson just signed that extension. And the Texans can fine him. His contract, as far as tolling year to year, if he doesn't show up and he threatens to sit out, well, they can fine him, get $12 million back. His contract doesn't kick forward, so he'll be due the $10 million and won't even get to the big money portion of it for yet another season, and keep going from there. So, I don't think that with players like Russ Wilson, there's a little bit of clout, cachet, and the way your contract is set up that you can get away with that. But with a player like Deshaun Watson, there's not. And so most players in the NFL, I just don't think it's a thing where they're going to have the power like they do in the NBA, just because of the nature of the way contracts are.
Benjamin Allbright, everybody, from the Denver flagship station, analyst for the Denver Broncos. We appreciate you doing that. Hey, man, appreciate your service, too. You mean a lot to all of us. Thanks for being here.
No problem. Thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Benjamin Allbright, KOA Colorado, flagship station for the Denver Broncos. He's locked in on that team. A lot of interesting things there to decompartmentalize. What did you guys think about the Drew Lock situation and whether they make the decision like, hey, quarterback's the need right now and go after it, or they trade back from 9, bring in a veteran to compete and solidify it and see what they can get done. And if it doesn't work out, if he doesn't improve, they blow it all up with a bunch of draft capital moving forward. What was your guys' thoughts on that?
They're in a weird position, man. I just feel like their problem is deeper than the quarterback position. I think it's continuity offensively. Like we talked about, I think the running back position is, like he even said, like not a lot of people are predicting the Broncos drafting a running back, but that might be a direction that they go just because Philip Lindsay doesn't necessarily fit in with Pat Shurmur and the direction of this offense is going to go. I think you're right, Ryan. I think that Drew Lock, given the right circumstance and given the right pieces, he's going to be fine. And maybe even a challenge. Who's been in Denver to challenge Drew Lock since Drew Lock has been in Denver? Nobody. He hasn't had somebody to compete with. So maybe bringing in a veteran to spark that competition, to put a chip on his shoulder, will give him that will light that fire under his ass for all intents and purposes, and he'll start performing to the way that we saw him at Missouri and that we predicted him to perform at the NFL level. So I don't know. I think that I could see them trading back to get other positional pieces and bringing in a quarterback to compete with Drew Lock. I don't think that they're going to replace Drew Lock this year. I think next year, what you guys talked about, the Spencer Rattlers, and maybe, I don't know, Keaton Slovis is in the Davis Mills, or I guess Davis Mills is this year. But those Pitt players, I foresee if Drew Lock not working out this season, they go and be aggressive in 2021 or 2022.
Many weapons.
Wow.
He's got many weapons, that's for sure. Getting Justin Simmons signed as an extension, breaking news there on the franchise tag part of it, I think would be huge to solidify that defense. We're gonna do the breakdown of Trevor Lawrence here when we get back. But first, we're gonna talk about Athletic Brewing, one of our title sponsors, a non-alcoholic brewing company that brings you tasty, refreshing, non-alcoholic beer that where you don't get yourself in any trouble. You get to experience all the great things that come with hang with the boys, but none of the consequences that unfold. I tend to tell people that I'm allergic to it and that I break out in handcuffs. It's not for everybody. Athletic Brewing is a company that also thinks about the wellness side of things, about athleticism. A ton of athletes have represented this brand. Go to athleticbrewing.com. Click on the link and order your first 2 6-packs and get 10% off. Athletic Brewing, non-alcoholic beer in the 21st century. I love it. I know a lot of our crew drinks it when we
big fan.
They're brewed right down the street from me in San Diego, and they ship it nationwide. So definitely get on that. I'm not even a big beer drinker. I mean, I guess none of us are. Charlie's the only one still in his college prime right now, right? The fraternity days. So I guess he's trying to get the Athletic Brew sponsorship.
There it is.
Upside down, non-alcoholic golden. So this is probably the closest thing to like Bud Light. I was a Bud Light drinker, you know?
Water. That's water.
Well,
see,
it got you drunk. All right.
Now I sit on the other side. I live in the beautiful, bountiful Pacific Northwest. Many micro brew craft beer up here, and I love a good thick beverage myself. However, Ryan, like yourself, I don't care for the after effects necessarily. I just like the taste, and I want to get about my day, go to bed early, and feel good in the morning. So actually, they have an IPA as well that I prefer. It's a little thicker, and it is absolutely delicious. So I'm a big fan.
Brew without compromise. I love it. I love it. Only 50 calories, people. Only 50 calories. It's pretty darn good.
Yeah, between Sunfair and Athletic Brew, you could look like this.
You can look like that. You can drink beer, eat steak, eat bacon, and you can have a 6-pack at 44 years old. I'm gonna be 45 here in like 2 months, so I don't know. I don't know if that all goes south or what.
The math is simple, folks.
Math is simple. All right, this is how we do it. All right. Get yourself a television show called The Ryan Believe Show. Order Sunfair, eat it consistently, and drink Athletic Brewing. You know, every chance you get, and there you go. It's you know, how to make friends and influence people. So that's pretty much what that book taught me, was to do this portion of it. So, all right, let's go to the breakdown. All right, we were going to do this up until the draft. I'm going to pick a player, most likely a quarterback, during this process. And we're going to break them down. Pros, cons, things that the scouts are looking at, and what we're going to see on draft day. One of the bigger questions is, and it's been raised recently by the likes of Brett Favre and June Jones, who was my quarterback coach in San Diego, also coached Brett Favre and Jeff George and the run and shoot Wonder Mouse Davis for years and years and years, and kind of a quarterback guru. He has some reservations about Trevor Lawrence, and there was some talk about that recently, especially after he got his labrum tear in his left shoulder reconstructed and took care of, and will be out for a little bit after his pro day. He's going to be the first pick in the draft. This guy is the most ready to play at the quarterback position, I feel, since Andrew Luck. I really do. He's going to be the highest graded quarterback since Andrew Luck. Now that doesn't mean he's going to be successful, right? Don't forget, he's going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that is a franchise that is still relatively new, has never had a Hall of Fame player. So, you know, if Trevor Lawrence were to live up to all of these things, Jack Greenwald, I think he's a bust. I don't even know what.
No, he hasn't even been in the NFL yet. Yeah.
Well, I think it's because you know, sometimes when you got the last name Greenwald, You know,
Uh-oh.
you act out a little bit
Oh,
sometimes, you know, and we don't like that word, Jack. You know, it's just it's detrimental to people's mentalities, and it's not true, right? If he gets drafted first overall, the last thing he's going to be is a bust. That's for sure. The guy calling him a bust, that may be a different story. That may be something you have to take a look at in the mirror at some point, but who knows? Let's see. Eric had this on Wednesday. I said he was here 50% because we wanted to see the Louisville Slugger come out, and now up to about 70% because of the bat. So I love this bat. I don't know if you all can see it, but it was made, and they put my name on it. Great Falls, Montana. This has been through some. Somehow I don't know how I've kept it through all and everything. Like there's things that I should have kept. Like you'd think I would have probably kept my powder blue Chargers jersey that we wore through the throwback somewhere. It would have got saved somewhere. Because that seemed important. But not the Louisville Slugger that I got when I was like 16 years old. But sure enough, when I went through storage, no powder blue jersey, but the Louisville Slugger from when I was 16 is there. So it's become a great addition to the show. He's not going to be a bust. If anything, he's going to go to a place where things don't work out, right? So here's my spotlight on him, all right? What he has in terms of pros is his leadership. Right, he is an unbelievable leader. You watched him last offseason when he clamored to be able to play when a season was on the brink because of COVID. He led in the social injustice part of it with his teammates as a leader on the field and in the locker room as a quarterback. It's unparalleled. He is a unbelievably mature individual for his age. I also like this. The pressure that has existed for him has been there since he was a child. He was the #1 overall recruit coming out of high school when he went to Clemson, all right? He won a national championship his freshman year as a true freshman. He was expected to win it every year after that and came darn close, losing in the national championship and in the national semifinal this year, right? He's expected to be the #1 overall pick. So the pressure of all those things are not going to bring him down. They have only bolstered him, built him up, made him more special. I feel. I think his arm strength is very, very good, but he also has the touch. When you drop a Tampa 2 linebacker or a scraping linebacker to the side of the flats, he has the ability to put touch on the football to get it over the top of his head, but also drop it in before that safety is there to either pick it off or make a big play. That's what makes him really special. I think he was held back a little bit in what they did offensively at Clemson. You know, the inventiveness around offense when you're playing with a ton of talented players is sometimes to try to be as simple as you can and just get these great athletes to rock. Now, what Steve Sarkisian at Alabama was able to do with that kind of talent pool was pretty darn amazing. That's why they were unstoppable and unbeatable at Alabama this year. I also think Trevor Lawrence's football IQ is he's followed Peyton Manning. He's wanted to be Peyton Manning. He wore number 16 for a reason. Watching him in Tennessee, and he's talked to him many times about how to go about things. I think that IQ is huge in terms of football speak. He's going to fit right in, and those for me are his pros. And there's, that's if you're building a quarterback for the next level, that is what you should be looking at. Those types of things. So let's look at the cons. Let's look at the things that need to improve. Because just when you get drafted over #1 overall, it doesn't mean you do continue to improve. That's a big issue that I had. Like when I got there, I thought, okay, I'm here. I didn't realize or think about, okay, so let's pick something I need to improve on every offseason to get better at. That's what's made Tom Brady so great. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. But every offseason, he gets with his quarterback coach. They sit down, they sculpt out what they need to improve on and get better. And I told somebody as the Super Bowl was about to kick off, I said, this is the best version of Tom Brady that you'll see in the last 21 years. And they're like, no, he's 43, things lost him. He's not in his prime in 2006, he was this, that, and that. I said, no, because there was deficiencies in 2006. And those things he's taken and improved on. So there's always something you can improve on. And you know what? Trevor Lawrence knows that. He understands that. The things that I want to see improvement on from him is sometimes he gets stagnant. And we saw it in the national championship against LSU, and we saw it in the national semifinal against Ohio State this year. When things aren't going well and it becomes a struggle, he tends to stay locked in on what they were intending to do, like within the game plan, and you have to make a change. You have to make some things that work differently for you. If you don't, you become stagnant. In those two games, and two of the bigger games of his career, it looked that way, and it's given people some ammunition around him playing in big time games. That stagnicity, if that's a word, is sometimes being too cool. He just doesn't seem like things rattle him. The emotionality isn't necessarily always there. But I've spent time on campus. I spent time in the locker room. I spent time in the quarterback room and on the field when I spoke with Clemson. And I can guarantee you there's an emotion there. People understand and believe that he's invested in this and wants to go and get it done. His weight's a little bit of an issue for a taller quarterback. 6'6.5", I think, was in the teens when he weighed in at his pro day the other day. He's going through a surgery. I suspect that his trainer's going to add a few pounds on him, because with that frame, you want to have a little bit more substance when you're going to be taking some hits early on in your career. So these are all fixable. These are all things you can take a look at. He's also had the most talent around him, always, right? At Clemson, Justin Ross, T. Higgins, Travis Etienne, Amari Rogers. I mean, just a plethora of players on that offensive side of the football and the defensive side of the football that can get him the ball back when he would take chances and make some mistakes. So what's that going to be like when they are certainly not the most talented team on the field in Jacksonville? How are they going to compensate for that? How is he going to deal with that? That's a question I want to see answered. Also, with what he did, how he stood up for his fellow players in terms of wanting to play last off season, the social injustice part of it. And we know in the NFL, right? If you make any kind of statement or make any kind of waves in terms of, kneeling for the national anthem or social justice issues and things like that, there can be some consequences. And I kind of look at that as the Josh Rosen tag, right? That hung on him before the draft, and he's just kind of bounced around and never been really given a chance. I don't think that's an issue with Trevor Lawrence. I just think it's something that some teams will be like, hey, we don't need that extra layer of scrutiny right now in terms of our quarterback position. So, and the final thing for me, before I get you guys' input on Trevor Lawrence, is Urban's addition to this. The only reason Urban Meyer took this job was because I think he knew that he was going to get the best quarterback possibility in maybe a decade to be his quarterback. And he liked that. And of course the money isn't a bad thing, and the challenge of being a pro coach. He's never had an under 500 season where he has been in a position to struggle like that. The year they did go 7-5 or 8-5 at Florida was the last year he was there before he up and left for health reasons. What happens when this team struggles? And even if they improve next year and go to 4-12, 6-10, that's below 500. Is he cool and calm enough to deal with losing and stay in the developmental phase with somebody like Trevor Lawrence? How is that relationship going to be affected? So one of the cons for me is more or less the Urban Meyer piece to this. It's not like he's going to an organization that has a stable set of coaching parameters like Sean McVay or Zach Matt LaFleur at Green Bay, where you have somebody who can speak to the quarterback position well. This is going to be new. This is going to be interesting. So he will be the number 1 overall pick. Those are his pros and cons in my eyes. I think it's a slam dunk, and it's a matter of what you put around him. I think Laviska Shenault on offense is going to be a guy he's going to rely heavily on. They're going to have to improve defensively, but it's going to be tough. We watched Joe Burrow get beat up quite a bit, though he persevered and played tough before his injury. I asked the question a year ago: if you go to Cincinnati, if you go to Jacksonville, and you're the number 1 overall pick, you may end up being a great NFL quarterback, but you may never see anything from it. May never be any fruits from your labor. Carson Palmer-ish, right? Carson Palmer got him to the playoffs. Andy Dalton got him to the playoffs in Cincinnati. Just never resulted in anything other than that. And I'm afraid for both of these quarterbacks, who I believe are a cream of the crop in terms of quarterback play the last couple of years, may just be kind of lost when it's all said and done.
So what do those organizations need to do then? Ryan, what does Cincinnati need to do for Joe Burrow? What does Jacksonville have to do if they draft Trevor Lawrence to make sure that they're not wasting these number 1 overall picks and the talent that they bring to the team? How do you get over that hump to make yourself a contender when you do have that one piece, but there's a lot more to be done?
It's hard. It's really hard, especially when it's systemic, right? It's been a systemic problem. They got to the AFC Championship with Blake Bortles, so that's a positive. They know they can do it. They built that from the defense, except they got rid of all those defensive players. So I would build from that side of things. Understand that you got a quarterback now that's not going to cost you football games, or not necessarily going to have to manage football games, but you get a defense that can be a little more aggressive and get turnovers. I think that's how you win at Jacksonville. As for Cincinnati, I don't know. It's going to be hard. Defensively, they were bad. Offensive line. First step first, if they can get Penei Sewell at number 5 in Cincinnati. If they can get that to shore up that offensive line and protect Joe Burrow, because guess what? The liability was that offensive line last year, and I thought it was going to cost them in terms of their number 1 overall quarterback and him getting hurt. And sure enough, he blows his ACL out midseason. So that's how I think you improve. Sometimes it's really hard. There's a reason why there are certain programs that continue to stay on top of the conversation in the NFL, and there's certain teams that kind of stay at the bottom and stay mediocre. We hope it changes with these 2 dynamic quarterbacks.
So I'm curious. So you asked Benjamin Allbright, our previous guest, about sort of the player empowerment movement, right? And how the NBA is sort of leading the way and players forcing themselves out of the situation. We saw James Harden this past season. We've seen it with Kevin Durant. We're going to see it a lot. We saw with Anthony Davis. He was really the first to do it down in New Orleans before he went to the Lakers. If this becomes a trend in the NFL, could there be a time when Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, these A-plus quarterbacks in bad situations force their way out, just like we're seeing Deshaun Watson try to do? Is he going to be the first that starts this trend, the domino effect, where exactly what you're saying? Trevor Lawrence is in Jacksonville, and they can't get over the hump. Joe Burrow's in Cincinnati, they can't get over the hump. They're going to force their way out into a better situation.
Well, if they're not winning, I mean, we watched Carson Palmer go through it in Cincinnati, right? He ultimately got a shift and went to the Raiders. Not much there. Got a shift, went to the Cardinals. There was some improvement there, but it's tough. The interesting thing about pro football is, you go to a place that you don't necessarily want to go to. You get forced into that, and then you have to be received by the city and be accepting and surrender to that. And that's sometimes tough, especially when you struggle. If there's anybody out there that can deal with the adversity, overcome it, and be a leader still going through all that, it's Trevor Lawrence. It really is. I think he's the best option for them. Speaking of the quarterback position, we had a ton of quarterback talk today, and we didn't even scratch the surface. We're going to get into that a little bit more next week when we talk about your Saints. What are they going to do? We talked about Drew Brees a little bit earlier this week. Charlie believes he's gone. We believe he's probably going to – it looks like he's going to come back. The Panthers, is Teddy Bridgewater going to be a sacrificial lamb here in the next few days and get rid of some of that big contract? We just talked about the Broncos, the Jets, the Cowboys, the Eagles, all of these teams. San Francisco still in the mix. What's going to happen at the quarterback position? We didn't even scratch the surface today. We cracked some Athletic Brewing beer, non-alcoholic beer, which I think was, it's a Friday, people. It's noon somewhere, right? And go to sunfair.com, everybody. Thank you for making this first week absolutely special. We're going to do it again next week, keep giving us feedback, questions on all our social platforms, and go to YouTube and subscribe to the Ryan D. Leaf Show. Can't wait to see you next week. From Jonathan, Sky, and Charlie, I'm Ryan Leaf. We'll see you next week.